And happy to have speakers Joseph Krupczynski, Rudy Perkins, Catherine Ratte, and Daniel Ross, who will be introduced by the guest curator of this project, Meg Vickery. So the full title of today's talk is Sustainability in the Community, Regional Planning and Grassroots Efforts that are Making a Difference. Tonight's talk is sponsored by Stiebel Eltron and People's Bank. We're happy to have their sponsorship and happy to have all of you here tonight. We are videotaping the event, and so we will have it available probably on YouTube and on our website, so you'll be able to refresh your memories and walk through it again. I'm going to turn this over to Meg Vickery, so thank you.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Sorry, I got to get out of the light. I think the gods, the nature gods, are sort of frowning on this exhibition. The weather always seems to get in the way. So you get extra credit for coming on such a horrible, horrible night. As you know, tonight's subject panel discussion is greening the communities. Our panelists will speak for about 10, 15 minutes each, and then we'll open up the discussion for questions and further discussion amongst the panelists. The speakers tonight are all experts in community involvement, bringing people together to be part of the process to effect real change. So I'm going to read a brief biography of each speaker so you know who's who. Catherine Ratte, can you wave? She'll be... didn't want to single you out that way. Oh, one quick thing. If you are here and you want AIA units, please see Lauren Starr toward the back. She's waving before you leave tonight, and you can get credit for coming tonight. So Catherine Ratte is the principal planner, manager in land use environmental section of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. She works on sustainability, focusing most recently on helping the Pioneer Valley communities achieve green community designation and facilitating the creation of the Pioneer Valley Sustainability Network. She's helped with the implementation of the award-winning Pioneer Valley Clean Energy Plan and the promotion of clean energy, energy use reduction, conservation, and efficiency to address climate change. She has expertise in participatory planning, smart growth, sustainability, clean energy, adult education, and the training of trainers, and in the intersection of land use and transportation planning. Catherine's been with the PVPC for more than 11 years. She's also worked for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, the United States Peace Corps in Cameroon, and the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault. She earned her master's degree in urban and regional planning and social work from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and has an undergraduate degree in literature and society from Brown University. I think it flows better now. If you just want to go?
Oh, okay, great.
And then I introduce, I think that's a little bit.
That sounds better. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out, and it's wonderful to be a part of this terrific panel. So I'm going to try and give you a brief history of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's role in sustainability, and then that will inevitably get me into sustainability activity in the Pioneer Valley. So, and again, as you all know, sustainability did not start in 2000. I started working at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission in 1998, and as an agency, we started getting involved explicitly calling it sustainability activity in around 2000, but obviously sustainability has been around for centuries, and we're just rediscovering it in the last century in this part of the world. So the first thing that we did at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and again, I know this is not a talk about the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, but I'll just quickly tell you who we are in case you don't know. We're the regional planning agency for the 43 cities and towns in Hampshire and Hampden counties. There are 13 regional planning agencies in Massachusetts, and we're one of 13, and the most forward-thinking and progressive of all of them. So our director has been with our agency for many, many years, and he travels around a lot. And so when he was traveling, of course, sustainability was being talked about more and more at the late 90s. Of course, it was talked about a lot in the 80s and in the 70s. It's been a wave thing. But so around 2000, we decided we needed to take an active role. And so we like to not impose things on our communities. We plan by consensus. We have no actual power, so we have to add value to the work of the communities and of the organizations and people in our region. So the first thing that we did was ask everybody, what would you think would be helpful for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to enhance sustainability in the valley? And we talked to the experts. We talked to people who have their work exhibited in the show, Bruce Coldham and other architects. We talked to experts in municipal governance that were focusing on sustainability. We talked to, I don't think we actually talked to Daniel, but maybe we did. We talked to folks who have expertise in community organizing and relating to food and housing, et cetera. And basically what everybody told us was, don't do anything new. We don't need you to do something. What we need for you to do is to get us all connected, that we're all working and we're pretty good at what we do, and we're very good at what we do. And so, but we don't necessarily know about each other, and we don't have time to talk to each other as much as we should. So what would be best is if you could organize us and document what we're all doing and get us connected. So that's why I have the connector, catalyst, network images there to get you subconsciously, unconsciously thinking about that. So we started doing that. We had a small grant, and again, this is a story to tell you about the issues related to enhancing sustainability. And of course, one of the big issues is funding and time and energy and interest from the powers that be. And so we had a small grant to get started doing this inventory work, and we worked with, again, John Fable, whose wife, Mary Krause, has an exhibit in the show, and others, to develop a technique of inventorying sustainability activity in the valley. And I was joking with my fellow panelists that there are 458,000 sustainability activities happening in the valley at any given moment, which I made that number up, but as you all know, it's probably accurate. And so we came up with this form, and we had a bunch of grad students and undergraduate students from Hampshire and UMass and other places collecting the information. And so we put it into a form, and then we had applied to the Economic Development Administration of the United States government for funding to turn this into a searchable web-based tool. And we got approval from the New England office and then from the Northeast office, and it went to Washington, and then this was in 2000. And of course, I'm not exactly sure why this happened, but we got an email fax back from the office saying that the Economic Development Administration will no longer consider any grant applications that have the word sustainability or sustainable development in their proposals. And this was obviously right after President Bush had taken office. And so that derailed those efforts, unfortunately. And again, because part of the issue of getting people connected and enhancing sustainability, I mean, obviously the people who are doing it, who make a living out of it, you'll hear about what they're doing, but as somebody who's trying to organize information and organize people, it's a lot dependent on money, and so we didn't get that funding. At the same time, we did get funding to facilitate development of a clean energy plan for the valley. And so our focus shifted to really organizing within that one area of sustainability, which obviously is crucial, looking at climate change and energy efficiency and generation of clean energy. So we ended up sort of getting diverted in that direction for a number of years. But in the course of doing that work and bringing the folks who do clean energy work, whether it's energy efficiency, solar, wind, biomass, what we discovered again in greater detail was that these people don't know what each other is doing. And so I was talking to all of them and knew what they were all doing, but they didn't know. So we brought them together regularly to talk, and that led to a collaboration between the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and UMass, two different departments. Well, it was the Environmental Institute and Industrial Engineering. And so because of the success of the clean energy planning effort, where it was wonderful to have all these different disciplines coming together and hearing what they were doing, and even though we just brought them together quarterly for a couple hours, you knew that they heard what each other was doing in the meeting, and then afterwards they could collaborate on grant proposals or projects together. So then we recognized the need to bring people from all different disciplines together. So basically it's back to the idea of getting them connected, but instead of doing it through a web-based tool, it was in person. And we were successful in securing some funding from the Environmental Protection Agency to create this network. And it's ongoing, and you're all invited. We have meetings every second. We were going to meet quarterly, but they all wanted to meet bi-monthly. So now we meet every other month on the second Wednesday. But in March, the Building Energy Conference, Nessie's wonderful Building Energy Conference, is happening in Boston. So we're going to meet on March 17th at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission offices in Springfield, 60 Congress Street from 8 to 11, and we give you breakfast. So this is the mission of our organization, and we have some deliverables that, again, we hope are enhancing sustainability and enhancing the work of all the thousands of organizations that are doing this work in the valley. And specifically, we recognize the need to do a couple of things that would help everybody to move forward. And one of them is to identify indicators of sustainability in the Pioneer Valley. And for those of you who've thought about sustainability, you know there are thousands of sustainability projects around the world. And so we had a wonderful group of grad students at UMass who did the research, collecting all the past projects, and we decided to do a top-down, bottom-up process. So they did the research on the indicators of what other people have done, and then we did a grassroots effort to ask people in the Valley, what do you care about? And so that we would do this values-based identification of concerns, and then impose the indicators of what people have looked at around the world. And so we just did our baseline of indicators, and Rick is here, who's one of our key people helping us with the indicators. And so now we're moving to the next point of how are we going to display that information. And so you can check out pvsustain.org to see what we have right now, but in the coming months we'll have a better sense of it. And the idea, again, is to help us all to work toward a common goal, but within our individual areas of expertise, but so that we're collaborating and enhancing each other's efforts, and not hopefully, being as efficient as we can, but without stifling creativity or innovation. So we'll have indicators that we hope will serve as guides for communities as well as projects. What we've always talked about is in Montague, they're building a police department, and they want to know what could they do. They have a limited budget, but they want to know what could they do to enhance, what are the things they should be concerned about. So the idea is we'd have these indicators that people could check what they're doing, and then we'd also have this skills bank, which again we've got 130 people that are active on the list of the Pioneer Valley Sustainability Network. We are becoming a member-based organization now where people have to pay dues, and so of course people are maybe going to drop away, but hopefully more people will come in. And so the indicators are there. The other big product that we created was this green building decision support tool. And again, the idea is we focused on green building for now because that was the interest of the the industrial engineer, Professor Aaron Baker. But the idea is we've now got this software, which again you can check out, and then we're going to create a decision support tool for water, for land use, for other topics that are of interest to people in the Valley. But so right now it's green building, and it's designed for individual property owners' residences. So if you've got a home, you can go to that tool, put in your square footage, put in your energy costs, and say, well, gee, if I did this much, if I put solar up, or if I switched to biomass or something, what would the effect be, both in terms of cost, greenhouse gas emissions, and health to your community in terms of the other air pollutants that you're putting out and that are affecting people's health in terms of asthma. So those are products. The other thing we did is, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Art of Sustainability or seen the table set for forever. Has anybody seen that? Raise your hand. None of you? Oh, one person. Well, that's good, at least two people. So we did this regional art contest to create a physical metaphor of sustainability. And we had 20 submissions, and we had an event at the Academy of Music in Northampton. And this woman right here, Jane Vakescheider, is an artist from Shelburne Falls. She won with this idea, which is called a table set for forever. And this is obviously the community process that she had creating it, but it's going to be at the library, the UMass library, in September, we hope. Is it September, Madeline? Yeah, September. So you'll all be able to see it then if you're still at UMass. So that's another thing that, again, to try and reach the public and educate people and get people to understand that sustainability is not just, energy and food, but it's also art and culture, and it's all aspects of our life. So then we're moving on the skills bank. So the challenges in terms of sustainability, again, I think you're probably all aware of them. I would say that one of the big things is that it's not particularly sexy. The solutions to our problems in terms of sustainability are really the basic things, live within our means. It's kind of going back to things that we maybe knew when we were children and then we lost track of. It's also a cultural conflict because there is an element of American life that clearly wants to consume and that takes pride in being able to waste things because it shows that we're rich. And if you've lived in other cultures, places that are really poor, there's hardly any garbage because everything is reused and recycled. And so obviously we're striving for a different kind of lifestyle that contradicts a lot of our American values. So that is a challenge. The funding obviously is a challenge, politics, so those are some of the issues. And then again, I just wanted to say there's so much stuff happening. You'll hear about 3 different examples from the panelists. These are just a few. We have some case studies on the Pioneer Valley Sustainability Network website, and then the based on what you all know, there are areas of the valley that are really well organized, like the food people are really well organized. We've had communities involved sustaining ag forever, and now we've got PB Grows, and then we still have local examples as well as these regional examples. Transition towns is, how many people are familiar with transition towns? So that's an idea that's come from the United Kingdom, but it's really taking off in our region. We've got networks throughout the valley. And then again, there's just tons of groups that are getting organized. So these are a few of the websites, but we've got very many of them. And it's not, again, I guess one thing I quickly want to say is that there's money from the feds to do sustainability planning on a regional scale, and we're going to be applying for those funds. And if you have ideas and you want to share them, you can talk to me. And that's how you can get a hold of me. Thanks. Next. Is it 2A? No.
Yes, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Rudy Perkins, and a brief biography here. Rudy is a former public television producer for the National Victory Garden series from WGBH, and is also a former professional gardener and small-scale organic farmer. He's turned lawyer a decade ago in mid-career. Since becoming a lawyer, he's worked as a law clerk for the Chief Justice Marshal at the Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts, and as a lawyer doing real estate and environmental law for a major Boston law firm. For the past 7 years, he's worked as a project manager and staff attorney for HAP Housing, a nonprofit in Springfield, Mass. That builds affordable housing. He's also a member of the board of directors for Nuestras, Raices in Holyoke. And we're getting there. But I wanted to say thank you so much, Catherine. As you can see, there's an incredible amount of going on in this valley, and Catherine is the resource for it. Good? Almost there? Yeah.
We're there.
Okay. Rudy Perkins.
Thank you so much. As Meg said, I'm a project manager and staff attorney at HAP Housing, which is a nonprofit that builds affordable housing in Hampden and Hampshire counties. And what I want to say tonight draws on that experience, but I want to make clear I'm not here speaking for HAP. I also publish a website on sustainability issues called Sustenance. But most of what I want to talk about tonight draws from my experience with HAP working in one community in Springfield, the Old Hill neighborhood, which is right, if you know Springfield Metro Center, that's the downtown area. You've got the Connecticut River on the left, and the Old Hill is a strategically placed neighborhood that we've been trying to revitalize. I've been working there for about the past 5 years. And through that work and just my wider readings about sustainability, I really feel we're going to need to touch on some of the wider dimensions of sustainability in order to make our work really become successful. Most people are obviously focused on the energy issue in sustainability, and that's sort of the heart and soul of it. But probably most of the people in this room realize that we're really going to have to make our community sustainable, we're going to have to deal with a lot of other physical systems, our food and agriculture, how we build our buildings, our housing, transportation systems, and also some of the issues that aren't raised as often, water, waste management, manufacturing, and so on. And I'll talk about housing more tonight in our experience in the Old Hill. But from that experience, I've really learned that we're going to also have to deal with the social infrastructure. That's really going to be key to sustainability. Issues like employment and education, healthcare, and in the Old Hill, what's become very important is just public safety and crime. And finally, at the other end of the crime spectrum, if you want to put it that way, is the whole Wall Street and financial crimes, which have totally trashed the housing market and really made our work building affordable housing very difficult. So I think for sustainability, we're going to have to look at the bigger political economic framework as we broaden our movement. Well, back to the Old Hill. It's a really important neighborhood because it's in the heart of Springfield. It's the triangle between, the residential triangle between, on the northwest, Springfield Technical Community College. On the southeast, the long century-old, if you've never been to Springfield College, it's a beautiful campus, liberal arts school right in the heart of Springfield on its southeast corner. And American International College is actually just off the northeast. There's a lot of churches and other institutions. This is Dunbar Community Center, a beautiful gymnasium. They have a dance studio, computer classes for kids in the neighborhood. Square One, an important preschool network, has one of its main facilities in the Old Hill. A very well-established elderly retirement community for low-income people on Mason Wright in this neighborhood. But it's also a neighborhood plagued by a lot of abandoned and vacant housing. As you can imagine, this takes its toll on the rest of the neighborhood. This building is right across the street from this lovely house. This cute cottage in the Old Hill is right next door to a boarded-up building, and right across the street from this, once a charming gingerbread house. Hap's actually going to take this on and try to rehab, and I'll tell you, it needs a lot of work, as you can see. So these are the challenges in this neighborhood. The city did an assessment in 2005, and you see that the Old Hill is sort of in the center there, and all those black dots are boarded up buildings and overgrown parcels. You can see they're heavily concentrated in this neighborhood. So and it's a low-income neighborhood, and it's predominantly African American and Latino. So the kind of endemic difficulties that all minority communities in our country have are concentrated in the Old Hill as well. So in 2003, Springfield College, realizing how important the Old Hill was going to be to their survival over the years ahead, started a planning process with the Urban League, the City of Springfield, the Old Hill Neighborhood Council, and others. And they developed a vision for the neighborhood, that you would have an education corridor down the right-hand side, sort of where that star is, between Springfield College and American International. Congressman Neal was wanting to develop State Street corridor, and if you've been in Springfield, you know that State Street's seen a lot of improvements now. That's along the north side. And then those yellow blocks are basically single-family and two-family residential neighborhoods, having a lot of the buildings that you saw. So 3 nonprofits, as part of our participation, HAP Housings, got together. We were all building housing in the area, and we decided to take on the task of trying to build 100 new homes or rehabbed homes in this neighborhood over 5 years. Springfield Neighborhood Housing Services, HAP Housing, and also Greater Springfield Habitat for Humanity. And one of the things we did, which was a little unusual, is we actually formed a joint company, a land banking company called Neighborhood Collaborative LLC, and that was a vehicle to acquire properties, and then we would parcel them out for development. We got TD Bank North to grant a $1.5 million line of credit that was backed by Springfield College as a guarantor. So you saw partnerships of different institutions working together instead of competing or working on separate tracks. This is a house that Springfield Neighborhood Housing Services built, where a really wreck of a building used to stand. It's actually a single family. It looks a little like it too. Very energy efficient building. These are some modulars that they built just recently, all 3 in a row on Pendleton Ave. And through a grant that HAP was able to arrange, they got solar photovoltaic panels on the back. So here in a neighborhood that's, you know, the oldest, one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, you're leaping ahead into the new era with photovoltaic panels and, of course, very tight energy efficient houses. A Habitat for Humanity rehab house and a couple of HAP houses. These are modest starter homes, 1,320 square feet, 3 bedrooms, bath and a half, full basement. This was built in 2006, and at the time it wasn't as common, but it has 2x6 walls. Now that's becoming like almost the low end of the spectrum, with a lot of extra insulation, more insulation in the attics, of course double glazed windows. We kept working on our insulation schemes. This was what we were using back then, and it was just sort of more fiberglass. Now we're getting into, of course, dense packed cellulose, open cell spray foam for sealing the buildings. We're doing different things in different buildings here, but it keeps evolving, and our specifications to our builders are getting more precise, as everyone's are, about air sealing, about how you do the flashing around the windows and so forth. We're using high-efficiency gas-fired furnaces, and usually with a combination in the hot water system. This is a Viessmann wall-mounted unit. The 95.2 annual fuel utilization efficiency, if any of you know building stuff, or heating systems, that's very good. That means you're basically generating, you're taking advantage of 95% of the heat that's in the fuel. And double glazed windows, this actually is a ringer from Wisdom Way Solar Village, a triple glazed window. That's why that U value's down there. We haven't quite ponied up for this kind of window, but if you haven't seen their project, there's exhibition photos on that. And then the city worked outside the realm of housing. The city did a lot of street renovations, playground renovations, new street lights, tree plantings, demolition of buildings. This is the kind of joint focus that you need to revitalize a neighborhood. And we formed an umbrella organization, the Partnership for the Renewal of Old Hill, with about 45 different groups to work on advocacy around crime, to do joint block parties and different events. And well, the challenge there as always, is resources and organizational time to keep coalitions like that going. And I know Catherine knows this well from the Sustainability Network. So there were a lot of positive lessons that we learned over the 5 years. You got to create a vision and build a strategy. I'm not sure our strategy is as tight. What are the steps to get there? To realize that vision. Creating partnerships, we've been pretty good at that. Looking for municipal players, larger funders, bigger businesses, as well as all the community groups and residents, and getting them involved. And I'd say, we didn't know this now, but 5 years was just going to be the beginning. And I think all of us have to, as urgent as the task is, we also have to take the long view about the changes that we're going to be making. And let me skip to the last point, which I think we overlook sometimes. It's not just about physical projects, it's really about building connections between the people in the neighborhood. And we're kind of coming full circle back to that, because we realize that the neighbors are not connected enough. And if the neighbors aren't connected, it's easier for them to turn their back when there's problems that another neighbor is facing, or break-in happening, or crime on the streets, and so forth. And I want to touch before I end on two downsides, the issues I mentioned at the beginning: street crime and public safety, and the financial context in which housing occurs. There's, like all of our urban neighborhoods, crime is sort of endemic, and I have intuitions about this. This is not my area of expertise, but when you look, I just threw Northampton as a comparison, and not by way of any judgment, but there's double the unemployment in Springfield. The income is so low. The percent in poverty, I didn't even know this, 27%, that's just astounding to me. And of course, educational levels are low, which ties up with the income and the unemployment. My sense is that young people in this situation are much more likely to turn to drug dealing, to gangs, to criminal activities of various sorts. And a lot of the crime in Springfield, to me, when I read the arrest records, looks tied to the drug trafficking that comes into poor neighborhoods, because it's the one business that's functioning there, at a high level. So I think we're going to have to look at the bigger issues of employment, education, and so on, in order to make our communities sustainable. And finally, we'll have to address the political economic framework. I had 7 new houses lined up to start construction in September 2008, and we had to pull the plug on all of them. Why? Because the people who have been running Wall Street and the financial system were completely irresponsible. They have for 15 years, this is a foreclosed house just down the street from our new house. Now that's not going to coexist. That undermines the positive work you do. And it's because and I go into foreclosed buildings all the time. I mean, when you see scattered kids' toys and know that the disruption of someone's life that a foreclosure means, it's just heartbreaking. This has taken a long time being deliberately planned. This is not an accident. This is the deregulation that has been built for 15 years by the powers that be. And there's a lot of politics in this. We are going to have to change this, or else all the good work that we do in our housing, in our food system, in our energy networks is going to be undermined by the overall political context. It's a daunting task, because I know it's just a struggle to do our projects, but I think we're going to have to tithe part of our time for this overarching political economic issue in order to make it work. And the good news is there's so many more of us now to do this. So, thanks.
Thank you, Rudy. A little sobering, isn't it? It's a big job ahead. Our next speaker is Daniel Ross. He's Executive Director of Nuestras, Raices in Holyoke, and he's recognized as a world-leading social entrepreneur with a lifetime fellowship from Ashoka, the Innovators for Public Good. He has 14 years as Executive Director of Nuestras Raices, a grassroots organization to promote economic, human, and community development in Holyoke through projects relating to food, agriculture, and the environment, and the Solutions Community Development Corporation. During this time, the organization has developed an extensive network of community gardens, a youth farming and leadership program, an environmental justice program, an organic artisan bakery, beginning farmer training, an incubator program with 30 acres of fertile farmland, and construction on the Centro Agricola for community education and business development. He's helped community members start over 25 sustainable small food and agricultural businesses, launched and is board chairman of Energia for-profit social enterprise energy efficient services company. He's the founding leader of the Holyoke Food and Fitness Policy Council, which was awarded a $4.5 million Kellogg grant, W.K. Kellogg grant, Foundation grant in 2007. And the Holyoke Youth Task Force and the Pioneer Valley Environmental Coalition, which has been funded by the EPA. He has previous experience working in community health clinics in New Jersey, Florida, and Massachusetts to develop migrant farm worker outreach programs with the East Coast Migrant Health Project. Winner of the Ashoka Fellowship in 2007, the Do Something Brick Award for Community Leadership in 1999, environmental recognition from the City of Holyoke Conservation Commission in 2001, and recognized for leadership by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. He's also a board member and trustee for Western Massachusetts Enterprise Fund, the Trustees of the Reservation, New England Grassroots Environmental Fund, among others. He's also a husband and father of 3 children and a marathon runner, which just makes me tired. Here's Daniel.
Thanks. Who says sustainability isn't sexy? Look at that guy. At least 5 or 6 people that I know of take credit for founding Nuestras Raices, that I know of. And that was before my time, so I don't know really what the truth is. But I give most of the credit to this guy in this picture here named Don Teodoro Ortiz, who's kind of an unlikely hero, especially to talk about here at this workshop with so many prestigious architects and environmentalists and professors. Don Teo was an old man, had about a 3rd grade education, barely literate, very grumpy and crude, big thick Medicaid glasses there, very serious alcoholic. He would call everybody mamones, which is kind of a bad word, and threaten them with his cane. Don Teo grew up in the mountain village of Ay Bonito, Puerto Rico. His family had mango trees, and avocado, and lemon, and banana trees, and coffee, all growing in their backyard. And he worked on sugar plantations when he was young, cutting the cane with a machete. And he first came to the Northeast U.S. as a migrant farm worker, working in the fields of southern New Jersey, and then in the tobacco fields of the fertile Connecticut River Valley of western Massachusetts. Don Teo and his brothers settled down in Holyoke, Massachusetts, looking for work in the factories. Holyoke's factories once were centers of the world's fine paper industry. earning the city the nickname the Paper City. And these factories had provided waves of immigrants with jobs and opportunities to move literally and figuratively from the tenements of the neighborhood called the Flats up the hill to houses and middle class. But by the time Don Teo and his brothers had got to Holyoke, industry was not the engine it once was, and the factories and jobs had moved south and overseas. Holyoke was still proud, but now a landscape of empty factories, decrepit tenements, and vacant lots. The poorest city in Massachusetts, and one of the poorest cities in the country, and far more than its share of gangs and violence and other social ills. And there was a vacant lot right across the street from the tenement where Don Teo lived. A church had once stood there, but burned down, and the lot was filled with bricks and rubble and trash and illegal activities. Don Teo's first floor apartment, where his brothers would gather to play dominoes every weekend, all weekend long. And Don Teo would buy cases of beer and sell the beers to the dominoes player for $1 each, keeping plenty for himself. They called Don Teo's apartment El Chupon, which loosely translated is the watering hole, and more crudely translated is something else, which I won't mention here. Don Teo didn't play dominoes, so while they were playing, Don Teo would look out the window at the street and at the vacant lot across the street for a number of years. But one day he crossed the street and began cleaning up the lot. He cleared out weeds with a machete. He cleaned out bricks and rubble and trash and needles and even crack vials. He threatened the guys in the chupon with his cane. Ságanse mamoncillos, pónganse a trabajar, until they came out and helped. They traced away the drug dealers, sometimes also with machetes. And with the help of a college student doing their thesis, the gentlemen of the chupon got permission to use the lot as a community garden. And they built fences. They got compost from a local dairy farm. They built a tool shed and painted it the bright colors of Puerto Rico. They planted tomatoes and peppers and cilantro and ajíes dulces and lettuce and gandules, and they made that garden flourish. They're good farmers, and they grew and harvested a lot. They made hot sauce and filled freezers with beans for the winter. They shared with friends and neighbors and sold at the farmer's market. They built benches where they sat in the evenings and shelled their beans, and they told lies about the size of their tomatoes. Not just the men, but the wives. Not the lies about the tomatoes, I don't think. But in total, 30 families worked together in the garden, and they divided it up into plots for each family. And not just the older people work in the gardens. The older gardeners wanted to pass on their knowledge and heritage to children growing up in the city. They set aside a plot in the garden for children and worked with a bilingual science teacher from a neighborhood school who brought children to the garden after school. And they made Don Teo be the teacher, and it was clear that he could not drink the days when he was working with the kids, and he took that very seriously and even stopped drinking altogether, which may have added some months to his life. Don Teo would cross the street to meet the kids at the garden and lean on the fence and instruct the kids in the finer points of planting, pointing with his cane. And these were kids who had grown up in the city and knew nothing of farming. When Don Teo first showed them a tomato plant and said that they were going to plant it and get tomatoes from it, they actually called him a liar. They carefully explained to him that tomatoes come from the supermarket. But they learned, and they were so proud to see their plants grow, happy to bring the tomatoes home and eat them. So many of them eating vegetables for the first time. I'm very happy to have adult mentors and very happy to spray people with the hose. Don Teo passed on a couple of years ago from cirrhosis and multiple organ failure, and we held a ceremony in the garden, planted a fruit tree in his honor, and several of the children that he taught were there along with the whole community. And so the legacy of Don Teo is Nuestras Raices, which means our roots, and it's our community-wide approach to sustainability. And the mission of Nuestras Raices is to foster economic, human, and community development in Holyoke through projects relating to food, agriculture, and the environment. I'm not sure how familiar you all are with Holyoke, not too far away, but also extremely high unemployment, over 31% in the downtown neighborhoods, the sixth poorest city in the country, high rates of obesity, among the highest rates of diabetes in the state, and interestingly enough, the highest percentage of people from Puerto Rico of any city in the United States outside of Puerto Rico. Years of neglect and disinvestment have led to demolitions and arson, hundreds of vacant lots in downtown Holyoke. But many of the residents of downtown Holyoke did come from rural Puerto Rico and grew up on farms and have lifetimes of experience in farming and agriculture and are proud to use that knowledge to improve neighborhoods and teach a younger generation. And so Nuestras Raices started with La Finquita Community Garden, the one that Don Teo started, and grew to have gardens throughout the city of Holyoke. We now have gardens in just about every downtown neighborhood of the city, and are just powerhouses of community development and improvement, with people growing thousands of dollars worth of fresh and nutritious organic produce for themselves. And many projects have grown out of the gardens. Youth development program where young people are not only gardening, but teaching gardening in local schools, building gardens with other local schools, expressing themselves through art and culture, learning about nutrition and cooking, doing environmental cleanups of neighborhoods, participating in community festivals and parades. Can you see the little goat on the front of the truck there? His name is Leandro. He's old now. He's still on our farm, but he stinks really bad. Urban planning and design, working on open space issues in the city. Young people have a farm at our farm site and are raising crops and livestock. This kid's name is Angel Ortiz, but they call him the Pig Whisperer because of his talent with the animals. I gotta whip through these slides pretty fast because the moderator threatened me. I gotta finish up in 15 minutes. That's Joseph. He's the moderator. Learning about entrepreneurship in our greenhouses and managing stands at our farmers market. Working not only with schools inside of Holyoke, but in surrounding communities, making bridges. We do environmental justice research and education and organizing to address the environmental issues that disproportionately impact the low-income Latino community of downtown Holyoke, looking at air quality issues and how open space is used, doing water testing, and that's an intergenerational project with young people working alongside adults and many different partners. Also growing from the gardens is economic development. Taking abandoned buildings and community assets and transforming them into places where people can use their knowledge and heritage of food and agriculture to start up businesses, bakeries and greenhouse operations and restaurants, catering operations. And this is Gerardo Ramos, who grew up diving on the reefs of Puerto Rico with his father and came to this area and wanted to start his own tropical fish tank installation and maintenance business, and he grows a lot of the tropical corals and fish himself in space in one of our greenhouses. El Jardín Bakery, which many of you might be familiar with, was started in Nuestras Raices. That's a little less healthy food, but pretty good. One of our latest projects is called Tierra de Oportunidades Project on 30 acres of land on the banks of the Connecticut River just outside the urban core of Holyoke. We trained people that were farmers in Puerto Rico and other countries of origin to be farmers, commercial farmers in Massachusetts. This was also kind of an abandoned vacant land before a community-wide intergenerational effort reclaimed it and made it into this beautiful farm site. It's some of the best farmland in the world, actually, Hadley loam soil right on the banks of the Connecticut River that was also in danger of being lost to development. That rooster's named Donald, after our local animal inspector. He's much loved on the farm, I can tell you that. I think he's a little scared. He walks on the farm with a pistol, actually. I mean, one of the things about urban agriculture and some of these sustainability efforts is that they're not very well understood by many of our city officials. And it's an educational process to get them involved in a positive way. Our farmers raise a lot of traditional crops, and we've done a lot of work with the UMass Agricultural Extension Services to adapt tropical crops to this climate to be able to grow them here. Different varieties of herbs and peppers and squash and beans, even fruits. So we train 18 small farmers on this site, and we do a lot of environmental restoration projects along the riverbed too. Again, working with young people. We have about 30 or so young people that work with us throughout the summer on these agricultural and environmental restoration projects. This was a historic barn that was on one side of Holyoke, and a developer bought the site and was going to throw it in the dumpster to make way for 40 condominiums. But instead we got them to give it to us, and we took it apart and rebuilt it piece by piece at our farm site. It's a 135-year-old timber frame historic barn. We have a little farm store operation on the site where we retail the farm products and arts and crafts. A youth-run petting zoo, that's the finished barn there. So some 20 plus micro enterprises that are happening at that farm site. And under also a traditional Puerto Rican pig roasting operation happens on weekends throughout the summer. We do cultural activities on site, big arts and cultural festivals with music, and we roast a lot of pigs. Our annual Harvest Festival, the last Saturday in September, is the best party of the year anywhere. Please stop by. Put it in your calendars now. With lots of great healthy farm-raised food. We work a lot with farmers markets in Holyoke and in surrounding cities, with teenagers running the farm stands, and a lot of work to make sure that the low-income people that most need access to healthy food can buy it through promotion of being able to use public benefits at the farmers markets. Not just with our own farm stands, but with all the local farmers selling there. Nuestras, Raices is working on forming many more local and regional coalitions to broaden impact. A youth task force, the Food and Fitness Policy Council, an environmental health coalition, and really with a commitment to community leadership in all these efforts, with innovative structures to engage youth and adult community members in the highest levels of leadership in these policy councils. One of the results has been a new salad bar that's stocked with local produce in our local culinary and our local vocational school, and the salads of ingredients grown by our farmers and local farmers are prepared by the culinary arts students. We work a lot on school gardens and community education around health and fitness. Some of our newest initiatives is green jobs training for local previously incarcerated youth. Youth have been learning how to do solar hot water systems and energy efficiency. And growing from this effort, we just launched Energia LLC, a new for-profit company that's wholly owned by, majority owned by Nuestras, Raices, with partners Co-op Power and Nueva Esperanza CDC, and partially owned by the workers themselves. The first crew just got started this week. If anybody has any buildings that need weatherization, please contact us. One of our biggest projects that we're planning now is building out that pig roasting operation and farm store into a beautiful plaza at our farm site with wonderful architecture that combines that draws from the architecture of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, and combined also with something that really works, and the New England also heritage of agriculture on our site. Designed by a prestigious architect and Joseph Krupczynski and his class of students. We do a lot of training also of groups of that are working to do similar projects in their own communities. Different groups of immigrants and refugees and urban communities throughout the country have come and visited us and participated in workshops at our sites to learn to adopt principles in their own communities. And the principles that Nuestras Raices are really built around, everything grows from the heritage of the community and the agrarian roots. Everything is community-led and driven with bottom-up solutions. I threw those pictures in there of Joseph so you give me a little bit more time. Everything is intergenerational and diverse, building bridges and building social capital. Everything is environmentally positive and connected with the land. So and everything cycles. The idea is that all these different enterprises are keeping money and resources within the local community and building not only a local economy, but building a community where people are once again connected and accountable to each other. Anybody know what that says? Yeah, that was great.
Make a difference in our community.
You got it. As as you can tell from this presentation, as both Rudy and Catherine also said, sustainability is really not just environmental. It's economic and cultural and social. It really will work in our cities and our communities when it comes from leaders like Don Teodoro Ortiz, and it engages all kinds of people. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. That was amazing. Our last speaker, as you know, is Joseph Krupczynski. He's an associate professor in architecture and design program here at UMass and is a practicing architectural designer, artist, and educator. His professional and academic work explores the links between a variety of spatial and social and cultural contexts through research, public and private design commissions, installations, and activism. Professor Krupczynski is currently working to establish a design outreach center at UMass, the Center for Design Engagement, or CDE, whose mission is to support critically engaged research and reflective practices in architecture, art, and digital media for communities and community-based organizations in Massachusetts and beyond. The CDE will link academic resources with community needs and advocate for innovative and sustainable design solutions in the contemporary built environment. His recent projects include the design of an installation in collaboration with photographer Wendy Ewald and social activist and artist Rick Lowe, exploring community-based economies in Amherst, Mass. And, of course, he's the exhibition and designer for Greening the Valley here in the University Gallery, which opened this month. So because of time, there's lots more. But because of time, he said I could cut it short. Joseph.
Thank you. Well, it's a great honor to be here with this panel. And as I said when I came in, this is the panel of all the people I love working with, because I've worked with all the people at this table here, and just to kind of see the work and hear what each of them are saying and doing in the Valley, I think is a very important measure of what happens with sustainability here in the Pioneer Valley. I am going to be quick, but I am really speaking in a very same mode here, because one of the things that I want to talk about and kind of start off this talk by showing this diagram, which is the triad of sustainability that is often discussed, and that balance between the economic, the environmental, and the social. And I think, as all the speakers mentioned tonight, one of the things that sometimes gets a short stick is the social aspect of the sustainability picture. That there's a lot of focus on the technologies and the environmental, economic components, and those are essential. So it's not this triad isn't. I think it's set as a balance because that's what it really should be. But one of the things that, perhaps because of its difficulty, dealing with the social component of sustainability is a challenge. And so I wanted, I kind of made a couple of slides just to kind of set up a context for work I'm going to show in Westfield, but that through community participation and involvement, this idea of design engagement and sustainability, what it means for me, it's a creation of more functional local and regional democracies, opening up local political processes, producing an educated and informed citizen. So I do feel that the work that I'm doing is also a reciprocal educational tool, both learning from the community and having them participate, but also providing information and new ideas in those contexts. And then promoting responsible decision-making, incorporating reciprocal practices of civic engagement into the production of knowledge, and creating collaborative relationships with non-professional partners. The last two, I think, were essential for the work that I was doing with Nuestras, Raices, and Daniel showed the Lechonera project, so that's why I knew he was going to show that, so I didn't put it in the slideshow. I figured I'd talk about Westfield. But I think one of the things about working in Nuestras is I've learned a great deal from Daniel and from the organization, and it has had a rather profound influence in my work. So the questions that come out of this is, how do we make places that are green, safe, convenient, and human-oriented? So that not to be, we do have a culture that is a consumer culture and a kind of technological culture, but there are values that we need to cultivate in a sense, and how do we begin to do that? So you can see, how do we make cities attractive and comfortable to all groups within society? So women, children, the poor, elderly, people of color, so that there's a sense that sustainability, if it's practiced in its true form, should be a balance of all these things and should be inclusive of many, many people. So the project that I'm going to talk about is this a Rethinking Downtown Westfield project, which was a project that I did last fall with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and Catherine, and the emerging center here at UMass called the Center for Design Engagement. And I'm going to go through this quickly. It had it was sponsored by the Department of Housing and Community Development and the City of Westfield, and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission applied for a grant to do this downtown planning. And as we have our project oversight committee, and then so we talked about this project in establishing a for for which the city was ready, because there was a lot of initiatives that were already happening in the city. The business community was ready. The college, which is the Westfield State College, was planning some initiatives in the downtown, and the residents were ready. So one of the important aspects of this project was to really focus on community engagement and have community issues be one of the driving forces in establishing what was going to happen there. So we used a process that had 11 different ways of doing community involvement. So we had a visioning workshop, we had downtown tours that were part of our design workshops, the design workshops themselves, which engaged over 2 weekends, over 150 Westfield residents. And we also did focus groups, because we recognized that not everyone comes to these public meetings, these charrettes and workshops. So we, when I say we, I did this project with 3 really excellent UMass architecture and design students, 2 graduate students and an undergraduate student. So we went out and sought the high school students, Latino residents, and seniors by going to where they are rather than expecting them to come to us to get the input for a particular project. This is the general plan that kind of emerged from the planning process, where certain neighborhoods and areas within Westfield began to be identified and began to get an identity as well, an identity that was both told to us by the residents that were there, and something that we were also able to kind of elaborate on from some of the clues that they gave us. One of the important things in the Westfield context is, in terms of sustainability, is the recreation and walkability potential that's there, and that played an incredibly important role in almost all the conversations in Westfield, particularly around, and you can see the thin green line in the middle, is the Columbia Greenway Rail Trail, which was sort of the spine of this downtown Westfield, now an abandoned railroad track, but hopefully a rail trail one day. We developed this kind of matrix to look at this, look at these areas, and this idea of sustainability as being a combination, a balance of different components and pieces. So we talked about it in terms of live, work, play, and connect, so that we can put all these things together, kind of establish a balance between ways people lived, worked, recreated, and moved through the downtown. This is a series of projects that we were proposing in various places. And one of the other things that I think were important for the Center for Design Engagement and within my own work is to begin to visualize what change can be. Sometimes that's a difficult thing within a planning process if we just rely on that, right? Because not many people can understand what that is. So we began to say, this is right now the Westfield River and an abandoned area of it. And we talked about what the potential was for development along there and how it could become this incredible, lively riverfront. So again, another view of the river as it is now, sort of just abandoned and overgrown, and what it would be like once it was transformed by, housing, walkable and pedestrian-friendly design, which is a kind of key component to looking at Westfield. So a typical street condition currently, and what would that be like if we promoted bicycle riding through the downtown, really promoted mass transit, used abandoned and underutilized spaces and made them places for people to congregate. This is the Columbia Greenway currently at the moment, what it looks like. And one of the fascinating things about it is that it's since the Greenway is lifted up, there's several bridges that navigate roads through the downtown, but it also puts the Greenway at the same level as roofs of many of the one-story buildings that are there. So you can see on the left there is a one-story building and a roof, and it's Tommy D's. It's a pretty well-known local bar. So here we said, Tommy D could actually, put up a bar on his roof and connect it to the rail trail and have this other. So we talked about how we could run a summer movie series there and just build a kind of temporary kiosk to kind of promote activities that are going on in downtown. So what we have now as next steps is that these planning processes need to move forward. I think part of what we tried to do in establishing a very engaged process was to capacity build within the community. Because as designer and someone working within a community, I'm not a resident there, but I need to, the work that I'm doing needs to be continued. And the way to do that is while we're working on these processes there, to build capacity. So perhaps the thing that I'm most proud about as this project goes along is that there's a Westfield Bike Pedestrian Advocacy Group, which is now called Friends of the Columbia Greenway, that has formed in the wake of this project, and is forming a 501(c) and is becoming a force within the city to promote the Greenway and the development of the Columbia Greenway within the downtown plans. And I think that aspect of, and I think it was kind of related to by all the speakers today, about providing even a kind of political advocacy within a city to promote ideas of sustainability and green is an important aspect of my work, and I think of work in sustainability in general. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. That was fascinating. Do you want to just open up to questions now and see if
I
there?
want to say one thing.
What? Am I holding it too loud? No.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
For people who live in Northampton or East Hampton or Hadley, Holyoke, Springfield, Ludlow, Palmer, your communities are working to achieve the Green Communities designation. And the City Council, for those of you who are cities, and it has to be a town meeting for those of you who are towns, it's going to be a vote. So if you live in any of those communities, get involved, just contact your city officials so that they make sure to support adoption of the stretch code, which is one of the criteria which will make all residential building extremely much more energy efficient. if anybody needs information about that afterwards, that's one of the key things that's happening right now in our region.
Yeah?
I wonder if you could experimented with ICF and architecture in any of your urban planning and development. You know, ICF, insulated concrete form.
Oh.
The wood shell thing is getting a little old. The platform's tired, and there's some new technologies out there that are great. Have you guys experimented with that at all?
We haven't. HAP Housing hasn't. We've been looking at some of these other forms of construction, and but we haven't done any work with that yet.
Anybody?
We don't do any building at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, but, any other questions or comments? Just yell them out. Rick?
Yeah, Rudy. I'm fascinated with what work you're doing and multiple dimensions of it, and the fact that you realize the impacts of the financial and economic side of things. And what steps you're planning on taking now, or what are you thinking about in terms of confronting the issues, the financial issues that are facing local residents?
Well, I think that's a bigger picture. That's a. I wish I had an easy answer to that. You know, I think that we're all going to have to look for ways to become advocates for different political economic structures, or at least more controls over the ones that are here. And I certainly am looking at some of the independent political candidates and working with them, and also people connected with the Green Party, I think, might have some interesting candidates. At a local level, there's obviously a lot of things that people can do to push their communities in ways to get more employment, more energy efficiency and self-reliance, all the things that we've been talking about here, greater urban agriculture. In terms of HAP Housing's work in the Old Hill, we're sort of cycling back to the issue of the partnership of the different organizations and seeing if we can revitalize that, make it more active, and work more closely with city government to address public safety issues. That's become a kind of a dominant issue in terms of whether you can attract people to move in and invest in a neighborhood or not. But there are just so many issues at the local level. I think we're going to have to look at the regulation at the federal level. I think we have to look at the regulation of the financial institutions and support the people who are starting to look at that. So.
Yep.
Daniel, is there a little more history behind Energia that you could share? Hoping to get more, create jobs out of this.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a community of young people desperate for living wage jobs and opportunities. And we also have a wealth of partnerships, and as we began working on our Green Jobs training program and developing partnerships with the Holyoke Housing Authority and other property owners, there really seemed to be an opportunity for us to start our own company. And Energy is specializing in doing energy efficiency work on multifamily housing, and there doesn't seem to be any companies really working in that space right now.
That's just started.
It's just started, yep. We've done our working on our first buildings this week. But with crew leaders with lifetime, with years of experience. So.
And some background about that, Co-op Power, which is a membership, a cooperative in the valley and throughout New England, has been looking to help support a community-owned energy service company for a number of years. And so they'd been laying a lot of the groundwork, looking for communities around the region, looking in Boston, looking throughout the region, and then hooked up with Nuestras, Raices, and a lot of the other groups that were happening in Holyoke, and then there was some funding from the state and the federal government. So it's a confluence of things that happened that got it off the ground. But there's there's so much energy activity and energy efficiency activity happening, and there's no locally owned energy services companies in our region. So again, it's great to have the group happening. And that's why it's important for us all to be connected, because again, that way we can find out about who's doing what and how we can work together to do that. And that's, so hopefully you'll all get involved with the Pioneer Valley Sustainability Network. Yes?
I recently went to the Greenfield Winter's Farmers Market, and
Uh-huh.
it was incredibly busy and happy, and yeah, I recently, well,
Yeah.
and the energy there was so high, and I noticed that there was only one this winter. I mean, there might have been a couple other ones, but is there any work being done on cultivating more year-round local food supply?
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more farmers that are growing crops in hoop houses and greenhouses. People are getting really excited about some of the winter markets. I'm seeing them pop up more and more. I think there's a lot of people that would like to, build more indoor market structures too. I think we're at the very beginning of seeing lots and lots of things coming out. I've heard great things about the Greenfield market as well. I think they'll try and do many more days next season.
Can I add one thing to that? There's a group right now called PV Grows. It was mentioned in Catherine's.
Yeah.
Yeah, PV Grows. I don't think this was actually on, but they are.
Mostly for the camera.
Well, they are looking into a project of freezing local food so that it would be available in local markets and supermarkets. So that's a pretty big, important project.
Yeah, and again, PV Grows has grown out of a lot of, as I mentioned, there's a lot of this agricultural work happening thanks to community-involved sustaining ag that's been around for 15 or 20 years, the Local Hero campaign. And just like looking at gaps, if we want to be sustainable, let's assume that, we have run out of oil and we're going to face major changes with the climate, and we have to transition to clean, safe, sustainable energy, and we can't be shipping our food from around the world. And we actually have to grow stuff here. There's lots of efforts now looking at doing that locally, and PV Grows is bringing all the different pieces together to say, what are the gaps in terms of how much could we grow here, where's it going, what's coming in, adding value so that we can package stuff, getting, maybe merging transit from people growing food in the hill towns, and then the people want to bring the food in, but they also want to come in for jobs. There's all these opportunities for collaboration, which again, that hopefully you all, creative ideas, you can share them with each other and with us so that we can take advantage of those. And that Livability Initiative, that's a regional sustainability planning initiative that will be like millions of dollars to the valley to how we can actually be a sustainable region.
I wonder if it strikes you all that it may be easier for a city like Holyoke, that's in such a decrepit condition as it is, that those might be just the types of cities that we could have the biggest impact on, that the cities they're dying from their old platforms of mills and the old oil platforms, that those are the exact types of cities that might really catch on and make the transition quicker than sort of these kind of more affluent, more comfortable cities that don't have that kind of immediate need to change, that gumption. And do you guys feel that same way?
I mean, I think that's the kind of positive, kind of growing from assets type of attitude that we're trying to also bring to bear. I mean, I think that Holyoke also and cities like Holyoke also have enormous challenges that some more affluent cities don't have. But I think it's got to come from all different points.
And in the valley, we have success stories of places like Northampton and Amherst that are rich communities that have been thinking about this, being politically correct, doing all this stuff for decades. And then we have, you heard from Holyoke and Springfield, places that are popping that, but it's not like they just popped out of the blue. I mean, Daniel's been there for 13 and 14 years. I mean, all this groundwork has been laid for a long time.
I think like in a place like Holyoke particularly, where you have the mill buildings, many of them that are along the canals running on the water from the canals, So, it was kind of model for sustainability, 100 years ago, but a lot of those, well, some of them are still used by whole gas and electric, but I think a lot of development that's going to happen there is looking at that and seeing that as one of those positive things that could, lead to that transformation.
I wonder what we're gonna do with all of these old mill town, the buildings. I mean, if you go through Athol, if you go through Orange.
Right.
That the old platforms that had sustained those towns have passed, and now all of a sudden there's these gigantic empty buildings all over western Massachusetts. We have to be able to figure out what to use these for, how to refit them for the deep energy retrofit and make them useful again, or make way,
Well, and that work is being done too. I mean, in the Ludlow Mills, the Western Mass Development Corporation and other groups are looking at that. And there's a John Mullen who, was one of the folks here at UMass who got funding for the Springfield Design Center, has been doing studies of mill revitalization for many years, and now he'd done the whole Blackstone Valley, and now he's turning his attention more to Western Mass. So that is happening in a lot of places.
But the one thing I want to just add to that is that, I think as you begin to look at what can transform those buildings, you have to kind of see it in that very holistic way of dealing with the social inequities that exist. So if it just becomes another form of gentrification as a solution to the problems of the environmental and the economic without really addressing that social one, it's not a sustainable solution.
Well, I think that, just to reply a little bit, I think that community agriculture is one of those great things, to get people out there growing their food together, eating dinner together, talking about what it means to be sustainable, and actually sharing that time and kind of quantum energy together, that's got to be the basis for it. That's how we really build community.
I think one of the interesting things about communities like Holyoke and Springfield is that as there's more maneuvering room. I think you've hit on something. There is some more maneuvering room because some of the values are down. You can get a hold of land. A vacant lot is not built on. You may be able to use it for community gardens because it's not Manhattan or whatever. And in Philadelphia, I've heard, now I don't know if they're starting to do this for real, but I've seen suggestions of it using rooftops of some of the old factory buildings to do greenhouse production and maybe doing aquaculture inside the buildings and so forth. So we can, I know we've looked at a lot of mill buildings for housing potential, and there are challenges. There are a lot of challenges with the old mill buildings. There frequently are environmental issues at the buildings. They're difficult to get new manufacturers to go into because they like a single level, no elevator, easy truck access, and our urban mill buildings are not set up for that. But I suspect a lot of them will get exploited for a variety of uses, and others will just be demolished, and we'll turn them into new spaces. So.
Trust me with it. Are there any other questions, or should we wrap up? Well, I want to thank you all for coming. It was really interesting and makes you pause, go back to your own communities. At least it does mine, with all its little, driveways into its private little isolation in suburbia. So anyway, thank you very much for all of you for coming and braving the weather, and I hope you'll come to the following lectures. Thank you.